The emergency meeting had been going for 6 hours straight. Council members from 40 different species filled the chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of clicks, hums, and translated words. Councillor Bryn tapped his 4 legs nervously against the floor. The insectoid diplomat had never seen such panic in his 3 decades of service. The humans must be controlled, Councillor Yaris declared, her feathers ruffling with agitation. The Avon strategist pulled up holographic images showing human colonies across the frontier. They adopt our predators as pets. They feed carnivores that should be hunting them. They cry over injured vermin. This emotional instability makes them unpredictable and therefore dangerous. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Bran had read the reports himself. Humans from Earth, a death world with crushing gravity and deadly wildlife, somehow possessed an overwhelming urge to nurture anything they perceived as helpless. They had already caused 3 diplomatic incidents by trying to rescue species that others were legally hunting. We cannot start a war with them. Another councillor warned. Their world has made them incredibly resilient. They survive injuries that would kill most of us. Then we need a different approach, Yari said, her black eyes gleaming. Demonstration of our authority. Something that shows them the consequences of their interference. Bryn felt his stomach turn as Yars explained. Her plan, a human colony ship, had recently passed through council space. Standard procedure required inspection of all vessels. During that inspection, they had documented every passenger, including a human infant traveling with his parents. We take the child, Yari stated coldly. We tell the humans it is, for quarantine purposes, standard procedure for Death World species. Then we dispose of it in a way that sends a clear message. The chamber erupted in argument. Some called it barbaric. Others insisted it was necessary. Bran wanted to object, but his voice failed him. He had seen what happened to councillors who opposed Yari's too strongly, and who exactly will carry out this disposal, someone finally asked. Yari smiled, an expression that sent chills through everyone present. Scholara, the name alone caused several councillors to flee the chamber. Bren had never met Scholara, but everyone knew the stories. The massive draconic creature had destroyed an entire pirate fleet single-handedly 15 years ago. She had torn through warships like they were paper, breathing fire hot enough to melt military-grade armor. Over 2,000 beings had died that day. Since then, Scholara had lived alone on an asteroid in the outer drift. She responded to no communications. She attacked anyone who came too close. The council paid her tribute twice a year, leaving supplies at a designated drop point just to keep her from raiding populated systems. She will eliminate the infant quickly, Yaris continued. Humans will receive the message. Deathworlders are not welcome to spread their chaos through a civilized space. The vote passed by a narrow margin. Bryn cast his vote against it, knowing it would not matter. 3 days later, he found himself on a transport ship carrying a small containment pod. Inside, a human infant named David cried continuously. The sound tore at Bren's heart. He is hungry, the ship's medical officer reported, and frightened. It will be over soon, Yaris replied, standing beside Bran at the viewport. She showed no emotion as they approached Scholara's territory. The asteroid came into view. A massive chunk of rock floating in the darkness. Sensors showed artificial structures built into the stone, including what appeared to be a hangar, large enough to hold a battle cruiser. Heat signatures indicated active power sources and one enormous life form. She is home, the pilot announced, his voice shaking. They received no response to their hails following protocol established years ago. They simply approached the designated drop point and released the pod. It drifted toward the asteroid surface, guided by small thrusters. Inside the pod, David screamed. Ben watched through external cameras as the pod landed gently on a rocky outcropping. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the ground itself seemed to move. Scholara emerged from a camouflaged entrance. She was even larger than the report suggested. Dark scales covered her body, each one the size of a shield, her legs each ending in claws that could tear through starship hulls. Carried her weight with surprising grace. Wings folded against her back were large enough to create hurricanes. Her head, long and serpentine, featured rows of teeth designed for rending metal. The transport sensors screamed warnings about energy buildup. Scholara could breathe fire hot enough to vaporize their ship if she chose. We should leave, the pilot urged. Wait, Yaris commanded. I want to see this. Scalar approached the pod slowly, her massive head lowered, studying the small container. One claw, longer than Brent was tall, reached out with surprising care. She tapped the pod's surface, causing it to rock slightly. At David's crying intensified, his tiny fists visible through the transparent sections. Scholar's head tilted, a gesture that seemed almost curious. Turn. Claw extended again, this time finding the pod's release mechanism with delicate precision that seemed impossible for such a massive creature. She activated the seal. The pod opened with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere. David lay inside on a small cushion, his face red from crying, his small body dressed in a simple blue outfit. Brent watched, horrified, as Scholara's claw descended toward the helpless infant. This was it, the moment that would haunt him forever. He had helped deliver a baby to be murdered by the galaxy's most feared predator, but Scholara did not strike. Her claws, sharp enough to slice through armor, touched David's chest. With impossible gentleness, the crying stopped. The infant's eyes, still wet with tears, focused on the massive creature above him. And then something no one expected happened. David smiled. His tiny hands reached upward, grasping at the enormous claw touching him. He laughed, a sound of pure innocent joy. Scholara froze, her massive eyes, each larger than David's entire body, widened. For a long moment nothing moved. Then, with infinite care, Scholara lifted the infant from the pod. Get us out of here, Yaris ordered suddenly, her voice tight. Now, as the transport fled, Bryn watched through the rear cameras. Scholara held David against her chest, her massive form curled protectively around the tiny human. She carried him into her lair, disappearing into the darkness. Bryn realized with absolute certainty that they had made a terrible mistake. They had not sent a human infant to his death. They had given the galaxy's deadliest predator something she would protect with every ounce of her legendary fury. They had given her a son. Scholara had lived alone for 143 years. She had forgotten what it meant to care about anything other than survival and revenge. The layer she had carved into the asteroid, was designed for one purpose: to keep everyone out. Dark tunnels twisted through the rock, leading to chambers filled with salvaged weapons and stolen treasures. Everything she owned was taken from those who had wronged her or simply come too close. But now she stood in her main chamber, holding something impossibly small and fragile, and every instinct she thought she had lost came flooding back. Infant had stopped crying the moment she picked him up. He stared at her with wide blue eyes showing no fear. His tiny hands touched her scales, exploring the texture with innocent curiosity. When she rumbled deep in her chest, a sound that made starship captains flee. The baby laughed. Skolara remembered laughter a lifetime ago when she had a mate and a clutch of eggs. She had heard her own younglings make similar sounds. Then the pirates came. They wanted her eggs for the black market, where dragon genetics sold for fortunes. Her mate died defending their nest. The eggs were stolen. By the time she tracked down the pirates and destroyed them all, her eggs had already been sold and dispersed across the galaxy. She had vowed never to feel that pain again. She had chosen isolation over the risk of loss. Yet, here she was, holding an alien infant who should mean nothing to her. The baby made a soft sound, and Scolaro realized he was hungry. She had no idea what human infants ate. Her own younglings would have hatched, ready to hunt small prey. This creature was completely helpless, dependent on care for survival. She looked down at David, her ancient eyes meeting his innocent gaze. He trusted her completely. He had no concept that she was dangerous, that she had killed thousands, that her very name made civilized beings tremble. To him, she was simply the one holding him, the one keeping him safe. "You are a fool, little one," she grumbled in her own language, knowing he could not understand. "I'm not meant for this." David gurgled and grabbed her snout, his grip surprisingly strong for something so small. Skolara made a decision that would change everything. She gently placed David on a flat rock, using her tail to create a protective barrier around him. Then she moved to her communication console, a device she rarely used. Her claws, designed for combat, struggled with the delicate controls. She accessed the galactic network, searching for information about human infants. The data was extensive. Humans, it seemed, documented everything about their young. She learned about feeding schedules, temperature requirements, developmental stages, and 1,000 other details. Hours passed. As she studied, David slept on the rock, occasionally stirring. Skolara kept one eye on him constantly while she worked. She learned that human infants needed something called formula, a liquid mixture of nutrients. They needed soft fabrics, constant warmth, and frequent cleaning. Her layer had none of these things. "I will acquire what you need," she told the sleeping infant, switching to the human language she had learned decades ago but rarely used. Her accent was harsh, her pronunciation rough, but the words were correct. She knew where to find supplies. A human colony vessel had established a supply depot 3 systems away. It would be easy to take what she needed, but there was a problem. If she appeared at a human settlement, they would assume she was attacking. They would fight back. People would die. Scholar looked at David again. For his sake, she would need to be careful. She would need to control the very rage that had defined her for over a century. She prepared carefully, using salvage materials. She built a small environmental pod for David, one that would keep him warm and safe while she was gone. She included sensors that would alert her if anything went wrong. The work took hours, her massive claws somehow managing the delicate assembly. When everything was ready, she gently placed David in the pod. He woke, briefly fussing at the change, but settled when she hummed a low frequency. That seemed to soothe him. She watched him fall back asleep, his small chest rising and falling steadily. I will return, she promised in human speech, the words feeling strange but right. You are safe here. The flight to the human depot took 4 hours. Scalara moved through space using the natural abilities of her species, her wings, useless in a vacuum, but her body capable of generating thrust through methods human science still did not fully understand. She approached the depot carefully, broadcasting on human frequencies. I mean no harm. I require supplies for an infant. I will take only what is needed. The response was immediate panic. Alarms blared. Security systems activated. Small defense drones launched, their weapons targeting her. But they did not fire. Whoever controlled them was smart enough to know that attacking her would end badly for everyone. This is Commander Sarah Park of Depot 7, a human voice said. Tie-dyed with fear, state your intentions clearly. I care for a human infant, Scalara replied, keeping her voice as gentle as possible. He requires nutrition and supplies. I will not harm anyone. I will take what is needed and leave. There was a long silence, then the commander spoke again. Her tone different, cautious but curious. You are Scalara. The reports say you are the most dangerous predator in known space. The reports are correct, Scalara answered honestly, but the infant in my care is safe, safer than he would be anywhere else. Now will you help me, or must I take what I need? Another pause, then surprisingly the defense drones powered down. Hangar 3 is opening, Commander Park said. Take what you need. But Scalara, understand this. If you harm that child, humanity will hunt you to the end of the galaxy. Scalara felt something like respect for the human female. If I harm him, she replied, you would be justified in doing so, but you need not worry. I would destroy myself before allowing him to come to harm. She entered the depot carefully, her massive form barely fitting through the hangar designed for cargo ships. Humans watched from behind protective barriers, their weapons ready but not raised. She moved to the supply section, her enhanced vision reading labels and comparing them to the information she had studied. Formula bottles, diapers, blankets, medical scanners, clothing, toys. She took enough for months, loading everything into a cargo container she could carry. Through it all, the humans watched in silence, their fear mixed with wonder. As she prepared to leave, Scalara paused. She turned to face the observation window where Commander Park stood. Thank you, she said in human language, for not forcing conflict, for understanding. Park nodded slowly. Take care of him. Whatever he is to you, take care of him. He is mine, Scalara replied simply. I will protect him with my life. She launched back into space, the cargo container secured, her mind already planning how to feed David. When she returned, as she flew, she realized something had changed. For the first time in 143 years, she had something to live for beyond vengeance. She had a son to raise. Learning to care for David proved harder than any battle Scalara had ever fought. She could tear apart starships with her claws, but holding a feeding bottle required precision. She had forgotten she possessed. The first time she tried to change his diaper, she accidentally shredded it with one towelin. The second attempt took 20 minutes and resulted in David peeing on her snout, which he found hilarious. "You are fortunate you were small," she grumbled in human speech, carefully cleaning him with a soft cloth. "If anyone else showed such disrespect, I would incinerate them." David giggled, reaching for her face. His tiny hands patted her scales with complete trust. Skylara felt something warm spread through her chest, an emotion she had thought dead. She was beginning to understand why humans were considered dangerous. This capacity for unconditional love was more powerful than any weapon. The days fell into a rhythm. She fed David every few hours, following the schedule from the human data files. She learned to read his different cries, understanding when he was hungry versus tired versus just wanting attention. She modified her main chamber, creating a section with carefully regulated temperature and soft surfaces. Using her fire breath at the lowest setting, she could warm water for his bottles. Night, she would curl around his sleeping area, her massive body forming a protective wall. She discovered that her heartbeat soothed him, the deep rhythmic sound helping him sleep. Sometimes she would hum ancient songs from her own species, melodies she had not thought of in decades. David grew quickly. Within weeks he was more alert, tracking her movements with his eyes, responding to her voice. She found herself talking to him constantly, explaining everything she did in both human language and her own. She had no idea if this was proper, but the human data files mentioned that infants learn from hearing speech. "This is a star chart," she would explain, showing him holographic displays. "Each light is a sun, and around many suns orbit worlds. Your species comes from one such world, a place called Earth. It is a death world, harsh and unforgiving, but it made your people strong." David would stare at the lights, reaching for them with his hands, making happy sounds. Scholar learned that everything amazed him. He found wonder in simple things: the way light reflected off her scales, the sound of her wings unfolding, the gentle vibration when she purred. Yes, she purred. Now she had rediscovered the sound while trying to comfort him. One restless night, it came from deep within her chest, a frequency that seemed to calm him instantly. She had not purred since her mate died. Not everything went smoothly. One day David developed a fever. Scolara nearly panicked, something she had not done even when facing entire fleets. Medical scanner indicated a minor illness common in human infants, but she spent 2 days barely leaving his side, monitoring every breath, adjusting his temperature, offering fluids. When the fever broke and he smiled at her again, Scholar realized she would burn down the galaxy to protect this small creature. Word of her change behavior began spreading through the criminal networks that operated in the outer drift. Traders who used to avoid her territory noticed she no longer attacked ships that passed at a respectful distance. Pirates who once feared her raids found that she ignored them entirely, too focused on her new responsibility to bother with vengeance. Some saw this as weakness. A bounty hunter named Crow, reptilian with more greed than sense, heard the rumors and decided to investigate. He assumed Scolara was holding a human infant hostage, perhaps For ransom, he thought he could steal the valuable prize and sell it back to human authorities. Crow brought a team of 6 all-experienced fighters with military-grade weapons. They infiltrated the asteroid during what they calculated was Scalara's rest cycle. They use stealth technology to mask their approach, confident in their advantage. They found David in the modified chamber, playing with simple toys Scalara had fashioned for metal scraps. At 6 months old now, he could sit up on his own and was working on crawling. When the intruders entered, he looked up at them with curious eyes, grabbed the kid and let's go, Crow ordered quietly before the monster wakes. But Scalara was not asleep. She had sensed them the moment they breached her outer defenses. She had simply been waiting, giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Instant one of them reached for David. She moved. She emerged from a side tunnel with such speed that 2 hunters did not even see her before she was upon them. Her tail swept them aside, slamming them into walls hard enough to crack armor but not hard enough to kill. She had learned restraint. David, she called out in human speech, keeping her voice calm despite her rage. Come to me. The infant recognized her voice. He turned, saw her, and his face lit up with joy. He began crawling toward her, moving faster than he ever had before, making the babbling sounds that meant mama in his developing vocabulary. Crow aimed his weapon at Scalara, but hesitated when he saw David crawling eagerly toward the monster. The infant showed no fear, only happiness. This was not a hostage situation. You have 10 seconds to leave, Scalara said, her voice dropping to a deadly rumble. Before I forget, I am trying to set a better example for my son, your son. Crow repeated, confused. David reached Scalara and grabbed onto her leg, pulling himself up with a triumphant laugh. She scooped him up with one claw, holding him against her chest. He snuggled into her scales, content and safe. Mine, Scalara confirmed, her eyes glowing with barely contained fire. He is mine. I am his mother, and you threatened him. You have 5 seconds left. The hunters fled. They ran through the tunnels faster than they had entered, their stealth technology abandoned in their panic. Scalara watched them go, making no move to pursue. She had made her point. They are gone, little one, she murmured to David, switching to the gentle tone she used only for him. You are safe, always safe. David patted her face, his way of showing affection. He babbled something that sounded like an attempt at her name. Scalar carried him back to his play area, but she was thinking about the future. The galaxy needed to understand. David was not a hostage. He was not a prisoner. He was her son, and she was his mother, and no law or custom or species difference would change that truth. She would need to make the council understand, even if she had to tear through their entire fleet to do so. But first she would feed David his lunch and read in the story about the brave little human who befriended a star dragon, because that is what mothers do. The bounty hunters returned to civilized space with footage that changed everything. Their helmet cameras had recorded David crawling happily toward Scalara, calling for his mama, showing absolute trust in the creature that was supposed to have killed him. Within hours, the video spread across the galactic network. News stations played it on repeat. The image of a massive draconic predator gently holding a human infant while he snuggled into her scales without fear became the Most viewed content in recent history. Public opinion shifted like a tide, turning on insected home world. Parents watched with their younglings, discussing the meaning of family. On the Avon worlds, philosophers debated the nature of maternal instinct. On the human colonies, people wept at the beauty of it while simultaneously preparing for war if anyone tried to take David away from his adoptive mother. The council found itself facing a problem it had not anticipated. Councillor Yaris stood before the assembled representatives, her feathers flat with stress. The creature has not killed the infant as intended. Instead, it has formed an attachment. This is unacceptable, unacceptable, a councillor from the aquatic delegation asked. Or, beautiful, my people have watched the footage. We see a mother with her child. We see love. You see a predator that has claimed a victim. Yaris countered. The infant cannot consent to this arrangement. It does not understand what Scholara is. Councillor Bryn, who had been silent since the disastrous mission, finally spoke. The child is thriving. Medical analysis of the footage shows he is healthy, well-fed, and developmentally advanced for his age. He shows no signs of stress or fear. If anything, he appears happier than many infants raised by their own species. That proves nothing, Yaris insisted. We must retrieve the infant before this situation becomes permanent. Too late. Another councillor interjected. The human government has issued a statement. They acknowledge Scholara as David's legal guardian. They have offered her full citizenship and diplomatic status. If we move against her, we move against humanity. The chamber erupted in argument. Some supported Yaris, seeing the situation as dangerous precedent. Others recognized reality. Scholara had committed no crime. The infant was clearly loved and safe, and forcing the issue would start a war nobody wanted. While the council argued, a human diplomatic vessel approached Scholar's asteroid. Ambassador Rita Hayes had volunteered for the mission despite warnings that it might be her last. She believed in what she was doing, believed that family could transcend species. Scholara detected the approaching ship, but did not power weapons. She recognized the diplomatic transponder. She had been expecting this. Ambassador Hayes. Scholara greeted formally when the communication opened. You may dock in Hangar 3. You'll be safe. Rita piloted her small shuttle personally, her hands steady despite her racing heart. She had seen the footage like everyone else, but seeing was different from experiencing. When she stepped out of her shuttle into the massive hangar, the scale of Scholara made her breath catch. The dragon was even larger in person, her dark scales reflecting the dim lighting, her eyes glowing with ancient intelligence. But it was the small figure riding on her shoulder that captured Rita's attention. David, now 8 months old, sat securely in a harness Scholara had crafted. He wore simple clothes and was chewing on a toy made from polished metal. When he saw Rita, he perked up with interest. Human like him, though he probably did not understand the significance yet. Ambassador, Scholara rumbled, lowering her head in a gesture of respect. Welcome to my home. To our home, Rita found her voice. Thank you for seeing me, Scholara. I come representing Earth's government and David's biological family. The dragon's eyes narrowed slightly, protective instinct flaring. Have they come to claim him? They want to meet him, Rita said carefully. His Parents died in an accident shortly after he was taken, but he has grandparents, aunts, uncles. They want to know he is safe and loved. Scalar was quiet for a long moment, then she carefully removed David from his harness and held him where he could see both her and Rita. What do you think, little one? Should we let them visit? David babbled, happily reaching toward Rita with curiosity. The ambassador stepped closer, letting him touch her hand. His grip was strong, his eyes bright with intelligence. He is beautiful, Rita said, softly and clearly, thriving. I can see you love him deeply. He is my son. Scolara replied simply, I will not surrender him. I will not allow him to be taken, but I am not foolish. David is human. He should know his heritage, know his blood, family, understand where he comes from. I will not deny him that. Rita felt tears in her eyes. We had hoped you would say that. The council wants to remove him by force. They say you are dangerous, that he cannot be safe with you. I am dangerous, Scholar agreed, but never to him. Those who would harm him are the ones who should fear me. They spent hours talking. Rita learned how Scolara had studied human child care obsessively, how she had modified her entire lair for David's needs, how she sang to him every night. Scalar learned about David's family on Earth, their grief at his loss, their joy at discovering he lived. They reached an agreement. David would remain with Scalara as his primary guardian. His human family would have visitation rights, teaching him about human culture and history. Scalar would ensure he learned both languages, both ways of life. He would be a bridge between species, raised with the best of both worlds. The council will not accept this easily, Rita warned. Then they will learn, Scolara replied, that a mother's love is stronger than any law. I have destroyed fleets, ambassador. I have made armies flee. If they come for my son, they will remember why the galaxy fears me. Rita looked at David, who had fallen asleep against Scalara's chest, his small hand clutching her scales. I do not think it will come to that. The footage has changed hearts. People see what I see, a mother who loves her child. Will you help us? Scalar asked, her voice carrying hope. Will you stand with us when the council makes its decision? I already am. Humanity stands with you. You protected one of our children when others would have killed him. That makes you family, and humans are very protective of family. Scalara felt something she had not experienced in over a century. Gratitude, not for protection or power, but for simple acceptance. Thank you, she said quietly. David stirred, opening his eyes. He looked at his mother, then at Rita, and smiled. In that moment, the future became clear. He would grow up knowing love from multiple species, understanding that family was not defined by biology, but by the bonds we choose. The galaxy would have to adapt, because Scalara had made her choice, and nothing would change her mind. Her son would be raised with love, and anyone who disagreed would face the full fury of a mother's protective rage. 6 months passed in relative peace. The council officially recognized Scalara as David's guardian after intense debate and pressure from multiple worlds. Public opinion had firmly sided with the unlikely family, making any attempt to separate them politically impossible. But not everyone accepted the decision. David was now 14 months old and walking. He toddled through the asteroid's tunnels with fearless confidence, exploring every corner while Scolara watched with Protective vigilance, he spoke in simple words mixing human language with draconic rumbles he had learned from his mother. His favorite game was hide and seek, though he was terrible at hiding, and Skolara always pretended not to see him. Immediately, the lair had been transformed. What once held only weapons and stolen treasures now contained toys, educational materials, and a growing collection of items from both human and draconic culture. Scalar had started teaching David basic lessons, colors, numbers, simple words she read to him every night from human story books, her harsh accent making the tales sound unique, but the peace was fragile. A faction within the council, led by Councillor Yars and supported by several conservative worlds, refused to accept the decision. They believed allowing a predator to raise a Death World infants set a dangerous precedent that would undermine established social order. If we allow this, Yars argued in secret meetings, what comes next? Carnivores adopting herbivores, predators claiming prey species as family, the natural order will collapse. She gathered allies, carefully building a coalition of the fearful and the traditionalist. They planned in shadows, knowing public action would fail, but believing a swift military strike could succeed where politics had not gotten the asteroid. Skolaris sensed something was wrong. Her instincts, honed by centuries of survival, detected increased surveillance. Ships lingered at the edge of her territory, scanning, watching, waiting. She increased security protocols and prepared defensive measures. Ambassador Rita visited regularly now, bringing supplies and news from Earth. David's grandparents had sent videos, which Scalara played for him constantly. He was learning about his heritage, about the blue world his species called home, about the family that loved him even from light years away. They want to meet him in person, Rita said during one visit. His grandmother especially, she cries every time she sees new pictures of him. Scalara felt conflicted. She wanted David to know his human family, but leaving the security of her asteroid felt dangerous. Still, she could not deny him this connection. We will arrange it, she decided, but on neutral ground with appropriate security, and I will not let him out of my sight. They planned the meeting for a space station in neutral territory 1 month away. Announcement was made publicly, celebrated across the galaxy as a historic moment. What nobody knew was that Yari saw this as an opportunity. The preparations were extensive. Scalar modified a transport capable of carrying her bulk while keeping David safe. She practiced constantly, running through emergency procedures, ensuring she could protect him in any situation. David sensed her stress and tried to comfort her, patting her snout with his small hands. Mama okay? He would ask in his simple speech. Mama is fine, she would rumble back, trying to hide her worry. Just making sure you stay safe, little one. 3 days before the scheduled meeting, everything went wrong. Yaris made her move. She had convinced enough counselors that removing David was necessary for galactic stability. She had assembled a military force under the guise of a training exercise. When the order came, 20 warships appeared at the edge of Skolara's territory. This is Fleet Commander Krell, a voice announced. Across all frequencies, we are authorized by Council order to retrieve the human infant David Morrison for his own protection. Surrender him peacefully, and no harm will come to you. Scalara felt rage ignite in her chest, the old fury she had suppressed for months. How dare they? How dare they threaten her? Child, she activated every defense system, powered her weapons, and prepared for war. You will leave, she transmitted back, her voice carrying deadly promise, or I will remind the galaxy why you pay me tribute. This is my son, come for him and I will burn your ships to ash. David sensed the danger. He clung to Scalara, his small face pressed against her scales. Mama, scared? He asked, his voice trembling. No, little one, she lied, holding him close. Mama is angry, but you're safe. Always safe. The standoff held for 30 minutes. The fleet did not attack, but neither did they leave. They were waiting for something. Then Scolara's sensors detected it. More ships arriving, but these were not council vessels. Human warships dropped from faster than light travel in perfect formation, 3 cruisers and 2 carriers bristling with weapons. Behind them came ships from a dozen other species, aquatic, insectoid, even some avian vessels, in direct defiance of their own council member. This is Admiral Chun of a human defense force. A new voice announced, the council does not speak for all of us. We stand with Scolara and David. If you want them, you go through us. More voices joined in. The aquatic confederation stand with the mother and child. The insectoid worlds declare this action illegal and immoral. We of the outer drift recognized no authority that would separate this family. Within an hour, over 50 ships from 20 different species surrounded Scholar's asteroid. They faced the council fleet in silent challenge. The message was clear. This was not just about one dragon and one child. This was about what kind of galaxy they wanted to live in. Commander Krell found himself trapped. His orders were to retrieve the infant, but starting a war that would split the galaxy was beyond his authority. He contacted his superiors, and the debate raged through council chambers with unprecedented fury. Counselor Br seized the moment. He had been gathering his own coalition quietly, beings who believed in the rightness of Scholar's claim. Now with half the galaxy watching and ships ready to fight, he called for an emergency vote. The question is simple, he declared. Do we believe family is defined by biology alone, or by love and care? Do we trust our own eyes, which show us a thriving child and a devoted mother, or do we cling to fear of change? The vote was closed, but it passed. The council would not interfere. David would remain with Scolara with full legal recognition. Any attempt to change this would require majority approval, which was now impossible. The fleet began to withdraw, but Yaris transmitted one final message aimed at Scalara alone. You have won for now, but this is not over. That child will be a problem someday, and when he is, they will remember I was right. Scalar held David tighter, her protective rage still burning. Let them remember, she replied. Let them remember that I destroyed a fleet to avenge my lost children. Imagine what I will do to protect the son I still have. As the ships departed, the allies who had stood with them sent messages of support. David waved at the departing vessels, not understanding what had happened, but sensing it was important. Big ships, he said happily. Yes, little one, Scalar agreed, her heart finally slowing. Big ships came to help us because you're loved not just by me, but by many. She realized then that she was no longer Alone, she had allies, now friends, beings who believed in what she and David represented. The galaxy was changing, and they were at the center of that change. The meeting with David's grandparents would still happen, but now it would be a celebration rather than a risk. The galaxy had chosen love over fear, and Scalara had learned that sometimes the strongest protection comes not from weapons or fury, but from the bonds we build with others. 3 years later, the asteroid that once housed only rage and isolation had become something entirely different. Ships arrived daily, carrying diplomats, students, families, all seeking to visit the place that symbolized galactic unity. Scolara's lair was now officially recognized as an embassy and cultural center, a neutral ground where different species could meet and learn. David was 4 years old, running through the corridors with the boundless energy of a human child raised in reduced gravity. He spoke 3 languages fluently: human standard, draconic, and the clicking dialect of the insectoid traders who visited weekly. His education was unlike any other child's in the galaxy, taught by his mother and by representatives from dozens of worlds. Scolara watched him play with a group of visiting younglings, a mix of species that would never have interacted peacefully before. David was teaching them a human game, his laughter echoing through the chambers. She felt pride deeper than any treasure she had ever hoarded. He is remarkable, Ambassador Rita said, standing beside Scolara. The human woman visited monthly now, bringing news and supplies, but also friendship. You have raised him well. He raises himself, Scolara replied, though her chest rumbled with pleasure at the compliment. I simply keep him safe and teach him what I know. That is what all good parents say. Rita smiled. His grandparents arrive tomorrow. They're very excited. David had met his human family through video calls many times, but tomorrow would be the first in-person meeting. His grandmother had cried through every call, torn between grief for her lost daughter and joy that her grandson lived. His grandfather maintained stoic dignity, but even he could not hide his emotions when David called him Papa Human to distinguish him from Scalara. The preparation for their visit consumed the day. David helped enthusiastically, moving things with his small hands, chattering constantly about meeting his other family. He understood now that he was different from his mother, that he came from humans, but it did not confuse him. He simply had a bigger family than most. Were they like me? David asked that evening as Scolara prepared him for sleep. They already love you, she assured him, curling around his sleeping area as she had every night since he arrived, just as I do. You are easy to love, little one. Even though I am small and soft, he asked a question he had posed before, comparing himself to her scales and strength, especially because of that. Scolara rumbled softly, your softness is not weakness, it is what allows you to feel so deeply, to love so completely. Never see it as a flaw. David nodded, already drifting to sleep. Scolara hummed her ancient lullaby, the one she had sung to him from the beginning, the one that somehow bridged billions of years of evolution and made them family. The next day brought David's grandparents along with an aunt, an uncle, and 2 young cousins. Scalara greeted them formally, but her massive form was intimidating despite her gentle tone. David had no such hesitation. He ran to his grandmother, who dropped to her knees and pulled him into her arms. "Oh, my sweet boy," she wept, holding him close. "You look so much like your mother." David hugged her back, then his grandfather, then the others, accepting their love with the easy grace of a child who had never known rejection. His cousins, twins aged 6, stared at Scalera with wide eyes. "Are you really a dragon?" one asked. "I am," Scalera replied, lowering her head to their level. "And you are really humans. We are all really what we are. Does that frighten you?" "No," the other twin said. "You are David's mama. He says you're the best mama in the whole galaxy." Scalera felt her eyes grow warm, an embarrassing response she had developed since becoming a mother. "He is biased," she said, "but I appreciate his loyalty." The day passed in wonder. David showed his family everything: his room, his toys, his study area where he learned math and language. He demonstrated his ability to speak Draconic, making sounds no human throat should be able to produce. He showed them how he could identify different species by their ships, how he knew basic engineering, how he could navigate the asteroid's computer systems. "He is brilliant," his grandfather said quietly to Scalera while the children played and happy. "We worried, but we see now he is loved more than he knows." Scalera agreed. "He has changed everything. The galaxy is different because of him." It was true. Inspired by David's story, other cross-species adoptions had begun. A human couple had adopted an orphaned Avon chick. An insectoid collective had taken in a mammalian infant whose world was destroyed. The walls between species were crumbling, replaced by understanding that family transcended biology, but not everyone approved. Yaris and her faction still worked in shadows, trying to undermine what David represented. They spread rumors, proposed restrictive laws, attempted to frame cross-species families as dangerous. That evening, as David's family prepared to leave, an alert sounded. A ship had breached the perimeter, refusing to respond to hails. Scalera acted instantly, ushering all the children and adults into the most secure chamber, positioning herself between them and any threat. The ship landed forcefully in the main hangar. Armed figures emerged, wearing unmarked armor. Scalera recognized a military operation despite the lack of insignia. They had come for David, using the family visit as an opportunity, but they had made a mistake. They had violated neutral ground, an embassy recognized by treaty, and they had threatened not just David but all the innocent Scalera was protecting. What happened next became legendary. Scalera fought with precision rather than rage, disabling attackers without killing them, protecting everyone in the chamber. David's grandfather, despite being elderly, grabbed a fallen weapon and stood with her. The human cousin's parents did the same. Even Ambassador Rita, armed only with a shock stick, joined the defense. The battle lasted 10 minutes. When it ended, the attackers were subdued, bound and awaiting arrest. More significantly, every moment had been recorded by the embassy's security systems and broadcast across the galaxy. The footage showed everything: the unprovoked attack, scholars, restrained defense, humans fighting alongside a dragon to protect children. It showed David refusing to hide, instead helping tend to minor injuries, with his first aid kit, showing compassion even to the attackers. The backlash was immediate. Yars and her coalition were exposed. Their involvement in the attack proven through trace communications, they were removed from power, charged with conspiracy and attempted kidnapping. The laws they had opposed were strengthened instead, making cross-species families legally protected across all member worlds. Standing the aftermath, surrounded by David's family and friends, Scholar realized how much it changed. She was no longer the galaxy's most feared predator. She was a mother, a diplomat, a symbol of hope. David hugged her leg, unafraid despite the violence he had witnessed. Mama was so brave, he said proudly. We were all brave, she corrected gently. Your family, Ambassador Rita, everyone who stood together, that is the lesson. Little one alone we are strong, together we are unstoppable. That night, after David's family had safely departed and he was tucked in a bed, Scholaris sat in her chamber and reflected on everything. For years ago, she had been given an infant to destroy. Instead, he had destroyed her loneliness, her rage, her isolation. He had given her a purpose. Beyond survival, he had given her family. He had given her love. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. Though David could not hear, thank you for choosing me, for trusting me, for making me more than I was. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would always be those who fear change, who could not accept that love transcended species. But Scholar was not worried. She had something worth fighting for, something worth protecting with every breath in her body. She had a son and she was his mother. Nothing else mattered.